The Why Me Project, an exclusive presentation of Faith Strong Today.
So I was thinking about this, that I've had the opportunity to introduce Brian in concert a half a dozen times. But in my career, I've actually never had an opportunity, Holly, to sit down and actually have a conversation with him.
And so this is exciting for you. I know it is. I've had conversations with Brian, just like
you guys are
hanging
like
out.
best friends.
We talk chai, because you can't say chai tea, because that's like saying TT, and that's weird. I've quite enjoyed being able to work and have conversations with Brian, and I can't wait to learn more, to dig deep today, because there's a lot of life, a lot of lessons I'm sure Brian has learned over the years.
Yeah, amazing singer, songwriter, incredible storyteller. Those are all things that I know because I've seen, but never sitting down and chatting with Mr. Brian Doerksen. How are you?
I am fantastic today.
Well, we like to ask the skill testing question because we never know where it's going to go. And that is, Brian, who are you and where did you come from?
Oh, I see how this is skill testing. Who I am and where I come from. Well, I'm the grandson of refugees that fled the Russian Revolution.
Oh,
so,
wow.
you know, I always think, you know, with the current refugee crisis, I'm only 2 generations removed from that, which is so kind of like that's where I guess you could say I come from. You know, I'm a person who loves singing, writing songs. I love making chai from scratch. I love being a dad. I have 6 amazing children who are so completely diverse, including 2 boys with Fragile X who don't have verbal communication, but who communicate in all kinds of other interesting and funny ways. And I have 4 amazing daughters and 1 crazy son-in-law.
Well, let's dive into your life because you have a lot of children, and yet you also have written a lot of songs. So just like my very first question is, how, as a singer, songwriter, storyteller, did you balance out the creative, but then also, you know, managing a household and raising children who kind of cover a plethora of abilities and personalities?
Well, my theory is if you have 1 child, it takes everything you've got. If you have 6 children, it takes everything you got. You know, it doesn't really matter almost the number, because the more you have, the more the whole group of them starts interacting with and even helping each other. So it's just a little bit more pandemonium, but it's still all demanding, you know. I mean, I think one of the answers that comes to mind when you ask me that question, like, how do I balance it, is right near the beginning, I had this idea, and maybe this is my kind of Mennonite Dutch German structured roots, but I thought I'm going to make a weekly appointment with myself that I'm going to keep, and it's going to be a weekly songwriting appointment. And for years it was Thursday morning, after getting the kids all out the door to school. And I was privileged with either working for other people or working when seasons where I was self-employed. I just said, Thursday morning from 9 a.m. till 12 noon is my songwriting appointment with myself. So I show up. I mean, like, life can be crazy on either side of this appointment. But at 9 a.m., I close the door, I walk over to my piano, and I say, you know, good morning, Mr. Keyboard, you know, what melody do you feel like feeding me today? Or I carry in the seeds. I'm a seed collector, seeds being song ideas. And I have my little bag of seeds, so to speak, in my folder, on my computer, and I open it up, I wanted to write a song about whatever, and I just go to work on it. And if the rest of the week I can never touch my creative thing, I always knew that once a week I had an appointment that nothing else could, you know, knock out of the way. So I think that's definitely been one of the ways, like from early morning till well into the evening, it's been kids this, kids that, jobs, juggling, all kinds of things. But there's always this part of every week where I know I get to work my creative muscles. And I think that's sustained me over the years.
You had mentioned Fragile X, but I'm not familiar with it at all. Could you give some insight as to what that is?
So Fragile X is the world's probably leading genetically passed root cause of like global mental disability. So Down syndrome would be the number one, but that's not genetically passed.
Okay.
Whereas Fragile X, so my wife was a carrier and we didn't know she was a carrier when we got married. My daughters are carriers now because of being born into our family. You have the highest percentage of Fragile X's in Mennonite and in Jewish families, and that's probably because of the persecution and how they, as people groups, would move from, like, German Mennonites. They started in Holland, Germany, Switzerland, and then fled religious persecution, ended up a lot in southern Russia, and then have scattered. But they were together as a group of, several million, and the Jewish people likewise. So as a result, you have a higher number of Fragile X in those communities, and we're a part of that statistic.
When did you realize that they had Fragile X?
So it started with our first son. So we had, Rachel was first, Esther was second, Benjamin was our third. And when he started not hitting any developmental milestones as a 2-year-old, 3-year-old, and by the time he was 4, we got the diagnosis, and our twin girls had just been born. And then we had them, we just did the test, the DNA or whatever test, and they all came back positive. But like, the interesting things is our girls, are very functional and don't show any evident disabilities, but they're carriers of it. So you have a range from being a carrier to having more noticeable disabilities, like our son Benjamin. Benjamin has a few words, but requires full-time support. And our youngest Isaiah, who's now our baby, is 24 years old. Crazy!
Oh, wow! Congratulations.
He has 3 words. No, and me, and then mama. But he has some basic signs, like if you can't see me right now, I'm putting my fist next to my cheek, which is his sign for home. So if we're out anywhere and he's starting to get anxious, he just does this. And I say, Isaiah, yeah, we're going to go back home after this is done. So he has ways of communicating. It's just very, very few verbal. They're just an incredible gift. They're very affectionate. And then when they're pulled out of their routines, they can get incredibly anxious and have complete meltdowns. And it's absolutely challenging, especially if you're out somewhere public and you have to try and, lovingly try and get them back to a calm down state and eventually get home. So, yeah.
How difficult was it then Hollie had said you have 6 kids, which is one thing, but now you have 6 kids with some challenges, and you also have a career where you're not home all the time and you're, out doing different touring and stuff. Did you find that difficult as an artist?
Absolutely. I remember actually this moment, because when you're living it, it just seems normal to you, right? Like, because all you know is the story that you're in the middle of. But I remember being backstage actually in Edmonton at one of the Breakforth events and having one of my only chats of my life with Chris Tomlin. And at that stage in his career, he was doing, upwards of 120 to 100, plus shows a year. And I looked at him and I go, wow, that's like another universe. I'll do maybe 30, 35 a year. I have to be incredibly careful and intentional about when I leave home because the cost is so high to my wife and to my children. Now, now that they're adults, they actually enjoy a week or two when Joyce and I are away, either on a tour or on a holiday or something, because then all the siblings just kind of manage.
Yeah.
And, my dad calls them the happy gang. They're truly are. They're very fun, content people. And so it's actually getting easier now to leave. But in the heyday of it, I was turning down 80 to 90% of the invitations I received and trying to figure that out as I went. It wasn't always easy. Mm-mm. So,
was faith a big part of your life? Like, did you grow up with a faith?
Yeah, I did. My parents were really, you use the word faith, and it's a good word. It's a word I love to use. And they were very faith-filled and faithful people, loving, kind. They were both teachers in, public school system, but had a very deep faith. And I'm speaking to you now on this little 5-acre piece of land that my parents bought when I was 4. And I can just look over there through this window at the little hill under the ginkgo balboa tree. And I would lie there on the hill in the summer. I was like 8, 9, 10 years old. And I would start, I heard the whispers of God. Like I heard the breeze blowing through the leaves of the trees, but it was being translated like some of the words from the book of Isaiah. Just these beautiful, the language, poetic language of creation and the divine, and kind of like the way that this all-knowing creator is actually at his essence, love. And I was hearing the whispers of love. And then I was feeling this pulling in my heart to do something with this, to share it somehow. And music was just the language of my heart. I never felt like I had the talent or, the natural, aptitude to be a full-time musician or songwriter, because the ideas I had were all so simple. But they were there. And so I just started doing very, simple things with these simple song ideas, and they just started resonating with a few people. So I was surprised when it turned into a full-time thing, which took multiple years for that to happen. But definitely talking about faith, it's really interesting how I still live in the place where my faith began, and I still have some of those very experiences here, hearing the whispers of God.
It's amazing that you didn't think that you were like a songwriter or that you could do incredible things musically, when we take a look at your resume of songs and they are soundtracks to so many people's youth. Johnny's raising his hand. Can we chat a little bit about how you were able to then transition from, I have these fun ideas, they speak to me, I feel like they're God's words, into now you are a part of Vineyard and a massive movement?
Maybe if I could say it like this, is that my journey into me writing songs started when a gap revealed itself to me. So like as a teenager, I learned the basics of guitar. I had basics of piano, and I would play along or sing other people's songs, and then in youth group, I actually started towards the end of youth group. I started, leading some worship, I never used any of my songs. I didn't have any songs, but I was learning how music can flow through you and not really be about you, but be an act of service to other people. And then I had this moment with our first baby daughter, Rachel, where she, put her arms in the air and in essence, without a word, saying, "Pick me up and hold me, Daddy." And I was holding her, and I was just turning around and just drinking in this moment of really unconditional love that I had for her. And then I started weeping, because I realized that God is often referred to in Scripture as Father, But my father, who was a faithful, good man, was also, because of his background and the horrendous suffering that they went through as a people, you're not into expressing emotional I love yous. You're not touchy-feely. And I was having this moment with my daughter, and I longed for this kind of connection with my earthly father and then ultimately with my heavenly father. And so I had this little whisper, why don't you take this moment and write it in a song, you know? And I was like, no, I'm not a songwriter. And then I tried to find a song already written that described this experience I was having, and I couldn't find one. And that was the key, because that gap became my songwriting assignment. So then I thought, oh, well, maybe I'll just try it. It'll be really simple. Probably nobody will ever hear it. So I wrote this little simple song called Father, I Want You to Hold Me. And that was it. It was my secret song until 6 months later. I'm at a home Bible study, and Andy Park says to me, he looks at me across the room at the end of the Bible study, which had been on the Father heart or something. He says, Brian, I just get this impression you have a song for this moment. There's 15 people in the room, right? And I'm like all nervous. So okay, I'll play you my secret song. And I play it, and it touches people. 6 months later, I'm in Edmonton. I'm the bass guitar player at a John Wimber Vineyard Ministries conference. There's 5,000 people there. They do a session on the Father heart. They invite Andy Park, I'm the bass player, remember, to go up and close the session with a song. And Andy looks at me and goes, Brian, that Father song, go. And I'm like, no. Like, anyway, eventually I say yes. I go up there. They're all looking at me like, why is this kid, the bass player, walking up on the stage? And Andy's just standing off the side with his thumbs up like, it's going to be okay, guys. You're going to like what's about to happen. And I sing this song, and people start weeping all over the auditorium. And John Wimber, head of the Vineyard at that time, makes a beeline for me after the end and goes, my father was an alcoholic. He left when I was 4. I've been waiting for a song like that. Could we publish it? And I was like, what the heck is publish? You know, like, what do you mean? Like, and then he says, the last thing, he says, do you have any other songs? And I said, oh, I just finished writing one. It's called Faithful One. And he goes, he never even heard it. He says, we'll publish that one too. And it's literally because of that gap moment and that experience with my baby daughter that I then put into a simple song, which then I kept to myself for months and was kind of pulled out of me and then pulled out of me again. It's like because of that moment that we're having this conversation. But in a way, nothing's changed. To this day, every song I write comes out of an experience and a gap moment. And if I go, oh, I can hear somebody else's song that really expresses this, I'll use their song. Very grateful. Because I know I can't write all the songs that even I need to sing, let alone that everybody else needs to hear and sing, you know? So yeah, I've written a few hundred songs over the years. I've written those into the gaps that have showed themselves up for me, but I still love hearing other people's songs because they speak for me in ways that I couldn't come up with, you know? It's a really interesting dynamic.
It's interesting because I had a conversation with Bart from Mercy Me, and we talked about I Can Only Imagine it being such a huge single. We had a chance to talk with Matt Redman about 10,000 Reasons, but probably one of those staples, Come Now Is the Time to Worship, is you look back on youth and growing up in church, and that was one of those each and every Sunday we had a chance to speak to God through that song. What is your reaction to when people come up and say you don't realize just how important that song was, or any of the songs that you do, to their life?
Those conversations and those letters and those emails have become some of the great treasures of my life, because what you do as a writer, you do often in private. You do sometimes in trepidation. You do vulnerably. You expose your heart. You take a risk. And then often you just kind of float it out there and you don't really know what it's doing, what happens, how it's serving people. So when you get that full circle moment, when somebody comes up after an event or takes the time to write me a letter and says, oh, my father was on his deathbed and we were all gathered around and we didn't know what to say. And then somebody just started singing Faithful One, So Unchanging. And there we were without an instrument. And then he passed and it was so peaceful. And we wanted to say thank you for speaking for us through that. And you just kind of go like, what a gift, what a full circle moment. Because when I wrote songs like that, I didn't know, they were a gap moment for me. They were what I needed for whatever I was going through to say or to sing or to pray. Faithful One is a prayer. Actually, out of also another moment with our baby daughter, both Father, Want You to Hold Me and Faithful One, two of my first songs were like that. I thought, with Faithful One, I thought, I'm now a father and I know I'm going to fail. I know this is such an incredible gift, but at one point I'm going to let her down and I'm not going to be faithful in every detail of my life. So God, I need you to be faithful so that I can be the father I need to be to this precious baby. And that was my prayer. And so I just picked up my guitar and started singing, And some of the stories I've heard, people were in a shipwreck and they were clinging to debris in the ocean for several days, waiting to be rescued. And that what they did was they sang Faithful One over and over again, as long as they had energy, as they waited to be rescued. I've had, all kinds of stories like that. So those moments when somebody says it in person or writes a letter are truly, yeah, they're the reward, they're the fuel, they're so much of what keeps me going.
I don't have a story like clinging to a piece of wood in an ocean.
We could go sailing,
life.
Holly.
We could go sailing.
But when you said Faithful One is your second song, no one had heard it, and they were just like, yeah, we'll take it. That's the song we sing to my youngest daughter every night. Every night it's like a part of a series of songs that we would sing to get her to go to sleep. And so for her, she's 7, almost 8. That's a song that she thinks of as a bedtime song. So it was written when you had your daughter. And
it's interesting. That's so cool, Holly, because there I was singing it in essence, to God with my baby daughter, trying to just live into that season.
Yeah. Mine's like, dear God, amazing. Be faithful and put her to sleep.
Yeah. Yeah, there's that.
Yeah. So many ways to be able to interpret a song.
Did you create the actions for Coming Now Is the Time to Worship, or did that just come out of nowhere?
The what?
The actions for it.
The actions. Are you talking about when that song was put on Veggie Tales?
No.
Is there actions for this song?
Come on, you don't know about the actions.
I don't know the actions. Brian, do you know the actions?
I do not. I thought maybe you're referring to when Veggie Tales covered the song when Bob and Larry
it's just my
sang.
church.
Your church made of actions.
Oh no! Oh boy!
We talk about drimes and that all the time. Remember? We used to. Anytime there was a worship song, it would be like, come now is the time to worship. There was. Oh wow! Okay, I'm sorry. I honestly thought it was a thing. Apparently, it's not, and just pretend like I'm normal.
We're going to just leave Johnny's actions in the past, and we're going to keep moving forward.
Okay, carry on.
Next question.
Next. Okay, so you are writing songs. You are now part of Vineyard. Imposter syndrome. Is this something that you ever experienced? Or did you just gracefully move into it, and you're like, yes, I'm a singer-songwriter now?
No, I think my entire life you kind of have, and I think a lot of people have this feeling that, one day they're going to discover that I don't know what I'm talking about, that I don't know enough about music or enough about life or enough about God or enough about any fill in the blank. So no, I don't think that ever leaves. I think it's always there. And I'm always surprised when songs resonate in a broad way, because I'm writing the songs that fill the gaps in my heart and my life, but I don't make any assumptions about other people. So and at the same time, I'm 58 now, and I actually have spent, the last 30 plus years, while I've been writing songs, I've been teaching other people to write songs. And so when I'm teaching other people and helping them with their songcraft, I recognize things. I can almost, as I'm helping them, I can realize, oh, and that's why that worked in that song of mine. It's almost like in retrospect, you can see why it worked.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
So you having this 30 plus year career, did you ever think then that this would happen? Like it's one thing to have a worship song or two, but you've made this into an incredible career.
Yeah, no, it wasn't something I even set out to do. I didn't expect it. And it's been like kind of like following the trail of, I mean, people talk about follow the trail of breadcrumbs, but for me, it hasn't been crumbs. There's been so much joy in the journey. There's been so much provision through getting to know people, through the creative process. It's been literally like following the joy of it, following the goodness of it, following the provision. And now I'm this far down the trail. I kind of figure what's really cool is I have peers that are starting to talk about retirement. They're in whatever different careers, construction, education, banking, this and that. And they're all talking about, okay, like 65 is like five years away. Maybe and I think, what? I'll just do this until, they carry me out in a box. Like, why would I ever stop having the joy of like writing songs? Why would I ever stop having the joy of helping mentor other people to do what they love and and encouraging them? Why would I ever stop, making films or this or that? Like, so I go, the pace may change a little, but it's just so much fun. I figure I'll just do this till I can't do it anymore,
Has it always been easy, or we hear of some artists saying, "Oh, I've got writer's block," and they just hit this season where there's nothing, there's no creative juices. It's just they feel like maybe they lost their gift. Have you ever experienced a season like that?
Oh, absolutely. I went through the downturn of music. So 2009, 2010, 2011, and a church blow up that we had helped plant split into many fragments. I got caught in the middle trying to be a peacemaker. And I went through it. I lost my words. I couldn't write songs. I went about 4 to 5 years without writing almost anything. And I started through that process being more intentional about helping other songwriters, but I hadn't recovered yet. So when it's flowing, I find it's a real gift. Now I do find that this whole concept of like writer's block and stuff. Once you've dealt with, say, a trauma or a wound that has really taken you out, like it took me some time, and I had to go through therapy, and I had to actually get EMDR therapy. I had to give it time. But once I reemerged, then I'm back into my weekly appointment with myself and everything. And then in one sense, I go, I'm not always like feeling super creative, but I can guarantee that every single time I show up for that weekly appointment, something happens. It may not be a finished song. It may not even be a song that's strong enough for other people to hear, but I find something to express. So, and one of the things I teach for my in my songwriting classes and mentoring is that the biggest challenge with songwriting and for writing in general isn't actually the writing, it's the sitting down to write. It's the making the decision to start even when there's nothing.
Yeah.
And to stay with it 15 minutes, 30 minutes, however long it takes until there it starts. There's a note, there's a phrase there, and then you just stay with it. So
this is the Why Me Project, so I want to dive into a Why Me moment that you've experienced, whether in the valleys or the mountaintop. Reflecting on your life, can you think of anything where you just thought, why me?
It was September 1997. We had recently found out our son had Fragile X, would require care for the rest of his life. We had tried to launch a musical. It had collapsed. We had lost over $1 million. We had lost our job, everything, and we moved to the other side of the world, to London, England. We were offered a job there. And I was walking the streets of London one morning. You use the language of why me, like almost every day, that question, that feeling, why? What did I do? And also, what can I do to get back on my feet, to like, what's next, God? Like, after this, like, and that was the moment when this, come, now is the time to worship, came floating, like crackling, like electrical energy in the air. And I remember looking up to the heavens and going, now, like, here, now, come, now, in my brokenness, I'm barely even hanging on to my faith now, which is why I put in the lyrics of that song, come just as you are, because I had to almost like give myself the permission that in my kind of disoriented, convoluted state of still wanting hope, still wanting to lean into the next season, but being devastated with what had happened recently in my life and in people's lives around me, with the church blowing up. So I think the beauty in a lot of our why me moments is that they can flip. They can flip from feeling self-defeated and absorbed to flipping around to becoming, oh, but it's this very thing that prepares me to be a carrier of love and hope to other people, because I've gone through this thing and I'm not the only one. Many other people have gone through devastating news with their children. Many other people have gone through devastating experiences in their faith communities. Many other people have been so disoriented, they don't even know where to turn. And what if part of what brings orientation, what brings a centering in our life, is that simple act of surrender to respond to an invitation of love that comes from beyond and above. And it just says, when we say yes to it, we come to life again. So yeah, that would be one of my why me moments.
If you were to look ahead 6 months, a year, 5 years, what does that look like for Brian? What are your hopes? What are your thoughts? I mean, is it solo projects? Is it duets? Is it groups? Is it, where do you see your heart?
Well, one of the things is I've written about 40 love songs, and I'm dreaming about doing a project that would be, some duets and everything, but it's really songs about love long love. I think our world is filled with songs about falling in love. But what I think our world needs, and I write for The Gap, right? I think our world needs more love songs that are about long love, about faithful covenantal love. So I want to do that. I have a whole nother album of songs that I call Peace, Love, and Honesty. They're more like honest worship songs. I've got, Marika Seward and I have written a Christmas movie together. We love Christmas stuff. So we want to get more into filmmaking. I don't know. Like I want to teach other people. We've launched unlockingyoursongs.com, which is a place online where I mentor songwriters from around the world. So here's the thing. 5 years from now, 10 years from now, I want to be riding the bicycle. And by that metaphor, I mean with one pedal, I'm writing and creating and releasing. And with the other pedal, I'm mentoring and helping other people write and be creative. I'm always the most satisfied when I'm doing both, when I'm, and I hope I'm doing that 25 years from now.
At Brian Doerksen on the socials, briandoerksen.com. He might not know the actions to some of his songs, but we love him anyways. Brian, appreciate you for taking some time and sharing your heart.
Oh, thanks so much for having me.
I'm going to make this statement, and it'll probably be one of the boldest statements I've ever made in my entire life.
Yes, those actions were terrible.
Is Brian Doerksen maybe the best guy in the whole entire world?
He's so chill and so humble. I just so appreciated our conversation today. I mean, you just think about the chapters of his life.
Yeah.
And at some point, I feel like me and my humanness would just say, well, God, it was a good run. Like, not that I would lose my faith, but I don't know if I could recover and still write and pour into other people's lives when I was dealing with 6 children and all of the different hurdles that came along with that. So it's very inspiring for sure.
And even like he said, Tomlin is on the road 150, 200 days a year, and he just didn't have that because it just didn't. But yet he still had and still has had an incredible career by only doing a little bit of touring. But the impact that his music has had, not only, as a Canadian guy in Canada, but around the world.
Yeah, and that's just it. He's a Canadian, and he's had songs sung internationally that continue to this day to encourage and inspire us in seasons where there is a gap. And those are the songs that fill them. They fill the void, and they give us the words that our heart is trying to say to the Lord.
It's taken me 20 years, but I'm glad that we finally had an opportunity to sit down and chat with Brian. Thank you to everybody who has downloaded, subscribed. Follow us on all the socials. We encourage you to do that, and even things like YouTube, Holly.
Absolutely. We are all those places, plus at faithstrongtoday.com.